See, the problem is like with all this, the living by principles, living a principled life, focusing on relationships, and kind of thinking of this life as this perfect thing, kind of forgets the notion that none of it, makes any sense, right? It kind of implies that this is like a video game and you want to get a high score, as opposed to none of this even makes sense. Like, why would he? Like, what that? like, like, what does it even mean to die? It's gonna be over. It's like everything I do, all these productivity hacks, all this life, all these efforts, all these creative efforts, kind of assume it's gonna go on forever. There's a kind of sense of immortality, and I don't even know how to intellectually make sense that it ends. Of course, gotta ask you in that context, what do you think is the meaning of it all? Especially for a computer scientist. I mean, there's
Yeah.
got to be some mathematical.
Yeah, 27, or what's the
That's
Douglas
a better
Adams?
number.
Yeah,
It's
or
42.
42. Okay.
27 is a better number.
I should read more sci-fi.
Well, maybe
I
you're onto something with a 27. People
don't
should
want to
look
give away
into
too
that.
much, but just trust me, 27.
Divisible. Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I don't know, obviously, right? I mean,
I was hoping you would.
yeah, I don't know, but going back to what you were saying about the sort of the existentialist or the sort of the more nihilist style approach, the one thing that there are intimations, right? So that there's these intimations that human has of somehow this feels right and this feels wrong, this feels good, this feels like I'm aligned with something, when I'm acting with courage to save whatever, right? It's not, these intimations are a grounding against arbitrariness. Like, one of the ideas I'm really interested in is that when you look at religion, right? So I'm interested in world religions. For my grandfather was like a theologian that studied and wrote all these books, and I'm very interested in this type of stuff. And there's this great book it's not specific to a particular religion, but it's Karen Armstrong wrote this great book called The Case for God.
Mm-hmm.
She's very interesting. She was a Catholic nun who sort of left that religion but one of the smartest thinkers in terms of like accessible theological thinking that's not tied to any particular religion. Her whole argument is that the way to understand religion, you first of all, you have to go way back pre-Enlightenment where all this was formed. We got messed up thinking about religion post-Enlightenment, right? And these were operating systems for making sense of intimations. The one thing we had were these different intimations of this feel like awe and mystical experience, and this feels there's something you feel when you act in a certain way and don't act in this other way. And it was like the scientists who were trying to study and understand the model of the atom by just looking at experiments and trying to understand what's going on. Like the great religions of the world were basically figuring out, how do we make sense of these intimations and live in alignment with them and build a life of meaning around that? What were the tools they were using? They were using ritual, they were using belief, they were using action, but all of it was like an OS. It was like a liturgical model of the atom that
It's hard coded in. So it did through the evolutionary process.
they wouldn't have called it that back then, or whether they said they didn't have that as pre-Enlightenment. They just said this is here, and the directive is to try to live in alignment with that.
Well, then I want to ask, who wrote the original code?
Yeah,
that's the open question.
Yeah, so Armstrong lays out this good argument, and where it gets really interesting is that she emphasizes that all of this was considered ineffable, right? So the whole notion, and this is like rich in Jewish tradition in particular, and also in Islamic tradition, we can't comprehend and understand what's going on here, right? And so the best we can do to approximate understanding and live in alignment is we like act as if this is true, do these rituals, have these actions or whatever. Post-Enlightenment, a lot of that once we learned about Enlightenment, we grew these suspicions around religion that are very much of the modern era, right? So like the Karen Armstrong, like Sam Harris's critique of religion makes no sense. Right. The critique's based on, well, you're making the assent to propositions that you think are true for which you do not have evidence that they are true. She's like, that's an Enlightenment thing, right? This is not the context, and this is not, the religion is the Rutherford model of the atom. Like, it's not actually maybe what is underneath happening, but this model explains why your chemical equations work. And so this is like the way religion was. There's a God, we'll call it this. This is how it works. We do this ritual, we act in this way. It aligns with it, just like the model of the atom predicted why, Na and Cl is going to become salt. This predicts that you're going to feel and live in alignment, right? It's like this beautiful, sophisticated theory, which actually matches how a lot of great theologians have thought about it. But then when you come forward in time, yeah, maybe it's evolution. I mean, this is like what Peterson hints at, right? Like he's basically, he's not, he doesn't like to get super pinned down on this, but it kind of seems where he sees it that way.
He's almost like searching for the words.
He focuses more on like Jung and other people, but I mean, I know he's very Jungian, but that same type of analysis, I think, roughly speaking, like Armstrong is sort of it's kind of like a Petersonian analysis, but she's looking more at the deep history of religion than, but yeah, he throws in the evolutionary.
Yeah.
Aspect,
and I wonder what home it finds. I wonder what the new home is if religion dissipates, what the new home for these kinds of natural inclinations are.
Yeah.
Whether it's technology,
and if it's evolution, I mean, this is Francis Collins's book also. He's like, well, that could be a very religious notion. I think this stuff is interesting. I'm not a very religious person, but I'm thinking it's not a bad idea. I mean, maybe what replaces religion is a return to religion, but in this sort of more sophisticated. I mean, if you went back, yeah, I mean, it's the issue with like a lot of the recent critiques. I think it's a straw man critique in a complicated way, right? Because the whole way the way this works. I mean, the theologians, if you're reading Paul Tillich, if you're reading Heschel, if you're reading these people, they're thinking very sophisticatedly about religion in terms of this. It's ineffable, and we're just these things, and it's just deep. It connects us to these things in a way that puts life in alignment. We can't really explain what's going on because our brains can't handle it, right? Mm-hmm. For the average person, though, this notion of live as if is kind of how religions work. Is live as if this is true. It's like an OS for getting in alignment with, because we through cultural evolution, like you behave in this way, do these rituals, live as if this is true, gives you the goal you're looking for. But that's a complicated thing. Live as if this is true, because especially if you're not a theologian, to say, this is not true in an enlightenment sense, but I'm living as if, it kind of takes the heat out of it. But of course, it's what people are doing, because, highly religious people still do bad things, where if you really were, there's absolutely a hell and I'm definitely going to go to it if I do this bad thing, you would never have, no one would ever murder anyone if they were an evangelical Christian, right? So it's like this is kind of a tangent that I'm on shaky ground here, but it's something I've been interested off and on a lot.
Well, it's fast. I mean, I think we're in some sense searching for, because it does make for a good operating system. We're searching for a good live as if X is true, and we're searching for a new X.
Yeah.
And maybe artificial intelligence will be the new gods that we're so desperately looking for.
Or it'll just spit out 42.
I thought it was 27. Cal, this is, as you know, I've been a huge fan. So are a huge number of people that I've spoken with. So they've been telling me I absolutely have to talk to you. This was a huge honor. This was really fun. Thanks for wasting all this time with me.
Yeah, no, likewise, man. I've been a longtime fan. So this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, man.